Oak King is associated with growth, expansion, the lengthening of the days, the building of light. He represents the energy of becoming, striving, building towards a fullness. And at Litha, he is at his absolute peak of power. And that is exactly when he falls, because then you have the Holly King. And the Holly King rules the waning half of the year, Litha through Yule. And he is associated with the darkening days, with reflection and kind of that turning inward, the wisdom through the descent into the darker part of the year. And he represents the energy of release, rest, and deepening. At Litha, he rises. Welcome to Big Crystal Energy, Season 3, the Veil Season. I'm Ashleigh, and I live at the threshold, between medicine and magic, between the visible world and what waits just beyond it, between the person I present and the witch I am. I've learned something. The in-between isn't a problem to solve. It's a place of power. This season, we're exploring the veil, where Victorian women spoke for the dead, where fairies guard the crossroads, where glamour becomes armor, where you stop apologizing for being both things at once. The crystals have always known the way through. Let me show you. Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to Big Crystal Energy. I am so excited to have you here with me today, and I'm very excited about the episode that I'm recording all about the Sabbat of Litha, which is the summer solstice. I will admit straight out the gate that I am not a summer girly pop, but I am someone that does like when it's light out later. And so the summer solstice is the longest day of the year. So love that for us. I am having some beekeeper coffee. It's a cold brew latte made with honey. I was just doing another podcast recording and I was like, ooh, kind of getting sleepy. So I thought, okay, let's go down and have, I need to get some caffeine going in my system right now. So we're having that. And I want to start this episode with, where's my bell? Where's my bell? Ding, ding, ding. What's giving me big crystal energy? So yesterday, this episode is coming out like a whole week later after I record. But yesterday, my family and I celebrated our 1 year vow renewal, family recommitment, handfasting ceremony in Iceland. And I was looking back on all the pictures of that day and that experience. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that was one of the best days of my life. And also one of the freaking coldest days of my life. It was so funny thinking back on how frigid we were and how I'm a little bit bummed because in so many of the photos, I am wearing this big black sweater over my beautiful dress because it was way too cold. I literally could not take that dress. I mean, I could not take that sweater off because the top of my dress was just lace. It was lace and velvet. Not a chance. And the boys, all my boys, my husband included, were all bundled up in their traditional Icelandic sweaters. So they were frozen, but not nearly as bad as me. But the coolest part about that whole experience was that we had gone out for hours driving around the landscape of Iceland, taking all these epic photos. The photos look otherworldly, really. And then at the end, we went to this place where there was this beautiful waterfall and all the purple lupin flowers, and the sun came out, and there was really no wind, and it was warm enough that I didn't have to wear my sweater, and we were able to have our little ceremony where John and I shared our recommitment to each other and our vows. And the boys were with us. Jasper was sleeping on John's shoulder, which was adorable. And Finley was standing there and he was just so excited. And that moment was just so special. It was really, really special. And shout out to Steph, the amazing photographer that we had in Iceland. I'll link her I'll link her Instagram in the show notes because she is such an incredible photographer, but she's also just such a cool person too. And she's also very witchy. Anyway, so to jump into today's episode about Litha, I just want to start with a question. What if the moment you've been working toward, the peak, the arrival, the fullness, is also the exact moment when things begin to shift? And that's really what Litha is. And that's really what I'm going through in real time right now in my own personal life. So right now I am at this kind of big threshold kind of shift in between my working career as a PA and just this pull that I've had for several years to work more towards my spiritual path and my crystal healing practice and all of those things, while also simultaneously trying to balance being a mother and the summer and leveling up across all these different areas simultaneously. And so it was really fun putting this episode together because it really made me reflect on not only this particular Sabbath, summer solstice, but also just some patterns that I'm seeing in my own life. So this episode, while it is going to be an explanation of what Litha is and all the things associated with it, it's also going to be much more than just surface level. Because over here on Big Crystal Energy, I love to go way more than just surface level. This is on the podcast, season 3, the season of the veil. And the veil does not only thin at the Sabbat of Samhain on October 31st. The veil thins at all these different turning points. And the solstice is one of the most powerful turning points on the entire wheel of the year, right? So this whole year, I'm going through the wheel of the year and sharing about all the different Sabbats throughout the year. And so the veil is thin. The veil is getting thinner as we approach the summer solstice. But what is Litha? What is the summer solstice anyway? Well, it's the longest day of the year when the sun is truly at its peak power. And that usually happens in the northern hemisphere around June 20th or June 21st. I remember last year we were in Iceland on the summer solstice, and it was so crazy because we were still in the northern hemisphere, but in Iceland, just the way that it is positioned in the world, it's light out so late. It's light out. It barely even gets dark there. It's light out like almost all the time, right? And so we were outside at, I don't know, 10, 11, midnight, something on the summer solstice, and it was still just like full daylight outside. And it was so cool. I just remember thinking like, this is such a wild and interesting experience. But the name Litha, the origins of the name are actually debated. It appears in the Old English calendar, but it was later adopted into modern neo-pagan practice in the 1970s when the whole Wheel of the Year was created. So this is not some ancient thing. This is something that it has more of a modern construct. All the Sabbats in the Wheel of the Year potentially have more of a modern construct than some sort of ancient lore. And I just like you guys to be aware of that from the get-go. But midsummer, or the summer solstice, is one of the most widely observed astronomical events across ancient cultures. And humans have been marking this moment for thousands of years. There is a big mythological association with this time of year between the oak king and the holly king. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more expansively because I thought this was really cool and interesting. And I didn't know that much about this. So that's why I wanted to unpack it a little bit more for you all. So there's this mythological framework, which is likely rooted in pre-Christian British and Celtic traditions, but it was later developed by Robert Graves in The White Goddess, which came out in 1948. So the underlying themes of this can be ancient, but the formalized system is more recent. So the idea is the year is governed by two kings forever in a cycle with each other. So you have the Oak King, which rules the waxing half of the year, which is Yule through Litha, right? So Yule is like around our Christmas time, and then through Litha, so Yule is the winter solstice, which is around our Christmas time, and then Litha, which is the summer solstice, which is in June in the summer. The Oak King is associated with growth, expansion, the lengthening of the days, the building of light. He represents the energy of becoming, striving, building towards a fullness. And at Litha, he is at his absolute peak of power. And that is exactly when he falls, because then you have the Holly King. And the Holly King rules the waning half of the year, Litha through Yule. And he is associated with the darkening days, with reflection and kind of that turning inward, the wisdom through the descent into the darker part of the year. And he represents the energy of release, rest, and deepening. At Litha, he rises. He is born from the very moment of the Oak King's completion. They are not enemies. They are the same energy in different phases. So the Oak King doesn't lose. He completes, and the Holly King doesn't conquer. He continues. Every peak contains the seed of its own turning. So this is why Litha is simultaneously a celebration and a threshold. So they meet again at Yule when the Holly King falls and the Oak King is reborn with the returning light. And the wheel just keeps on turning. Neither king dies permanently. They are in eternal exchange. After the solstice on June 20th or June 21st, the days start to shorten little by little, slowly and almost imperceptibly through July, right? So the shortening of the day is just like a minute or 2 minutes. So it's not really noticeable. And then it accelerates. Sorry, I'm setting my notes down next to me. It accelerates toward Mabon and beyond. The sun doesn't really announce its retreat. It just begins retreating. And you can really feel this. You can see that through the summer, we don't really notice. It's kind of imperceptible how the days get shorter and shorter. But then as we reach towards fall and the late summer, you can start noticing how the days are getting shorter and shorter. So celebrating Litha across the different cultures. One of the most famous places is Stonehenge. Stonehenge was built to align with the solstice. There's still an unresolved debate. Was Stonehenge oriented to the sunrise or the sunset? That's still not a clean answer, but people travel to Stonehenge every year for the summer solstice. It looks really cool to go there, but I'm sure it's very busy, very crowded. Also in Scandinavia, there's something called Midsummer, Sommar. It's one of the most culturally significant holidays of the year. They have bonfires, flowers, communal celebration. It kind of sounds like Beltane, honestly, but it's midsummer. And then in Eastern Europe, they have Ivan Kupala. This is something that I was not familiar with. They use the symbolism of water, fire, leaping flames. They celebrate purification and fertility. So there's really this global solar reverence going on. And humans across every culture over thousands of years have really felt the weight of this particular day. So even though our construct of the Wheel of the Year is largely more a 20th century construct as we practice it, that doesn't really diminish its power. It's just another way of looking at the conscious rhythms of the earth. I want to get into some of the deeper magic of Litha. I want to talk to you guys about the famous Midsummer's Night Dream by Shakespeare. And this is kind of just a cultural touchstone. I'm sure many of you have heard of A Midsummer's Night Dream or you've gone to one of the plays. That's really fun. Shakespeare set this play deliberately at the solstice threshold. So I just want to give a quick story for listeners who know the title, but they don't really know the plot. I can be really honest with you guys. I didn't really know the plot of this either. I have A Midsummer's Night Dream sitting on my bookshelf, but I've never read it. Maybe little bits and pieces when I was in school. So you have Oberon and Titania. Oberon and Titania. Oh my gosh, I'm probably butchering these names. I'm so sorry. So you have King and Queen of the Fairies. They are in conflict. You have Puck, a shape-shifting trickster spirit, is sent to meddle with human lovers in an enchanted forest. Basically, what happens is love potions go wrong. A man ends up with a donkey's head. Everyone falls in love with the wrong person. By morning, the spell breaks and the world mostly resets. Shakespeare set this in the midsummer woods deliberately because there's the boundary between the ordinary world and the enchanted one, and it becomes permeable at this particular threshold. Things are not what they seem. There are identity shapeshifts, and the forest is a liminal space. We all know that. This wasn't just a theatrical atmosphere, it was sort of this cosmological accuracy. So that's kind of the gist of what's behind the Midsummer's Night Dream. So Litha is truly a veil moment. The fairy tradition is very explicit. Litha is when summer spirits are most likely to appear as humans. Most people only think of Samhain when they think of the veil thinning, but every major turning point on the Wheel of the Year has its own version of the veil thinning. The solstice is extra charged just because it's a big hinge point. It's the maximum light containing the seed of darkness, right? So you're at this maximum point of lightness, but you know that the next day is when that little tiny seed of darkness is going to start filtering in. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about when I was putting this episode together was this idea of the Oak King mythology as a personal mirror, right? So what does it feel like to hold full power in two domains simultaneously, right? And I was thinking about this in regards to my life as a professional in clinical medicine, as a PA, my life also as a mother, as a podcaster, as someone that's working with crystal healing. Currently, both are kind of sort of at a peak, right? Like I've been in my clinical practice for nearly 20 years. I've been doing podcasting now over 2 years. I've been working with crystals for years. And both of these things are kind of asking something of me. And this is kind of that interplay between the Oak King and the Holly King, the playing of things reaching a maximum point and then things kind of dying down, right? So the Oak King myth isn't about defeating another. It's about the natural rhythm of what gets light and when. So where are you being asked to let something kind of pull back, not disappear, but just kind of pull back so that something else can come into its power? And so the way that I was thinking about this is that, currently in my own personal journey, I have been working in clinical medicine. I've been doing orthopedic surgery specifically for 10 years this month. And while I do care very much for my patients, I do care very much for the work that I do, and I'm still fully present in my work. It's not something that is, it's not the main thing on my heart, right? The main thing on my heart right now is this podcast, building community here, is doing my crystal healing, Akasha crystal healing course, like working on those things, right? So it's not like my clinical practice is going away. It's just that it's not the primary, most important thing in my life. These other things are emerging as being more of the primary thing. Now that's, I want to make sure that I'm framing that in a way that makes it sound like I'm not caring less for my current patients. It's just that it's just something that I'm so comfortable with and I've been doing for so long that I have the ability to also shift into something else, right? So like if I was fresh out of school, fresh out of training from PA, I probably would be at that time. I was so fully focused on this aspect of my career that I wasn't pursuing other things at that time because I just didn't have the capacity for it. But now, because I've been doing this for so long, I have the capacity to build other things. If that makes sense to you. I think it makes sense, right? Now, another big theme of Litha is the idea of bonfires and fires being this symbol of illumination and release. So the bonfires at Litha weren't just a celebration, like a form of celebration. They were serious. They were like also just this way of kind of a purification process, right? They were illuminating the things inside of the people and then also allowing for this release. So whatever you feed the fire starts to transform, right? Because if you feed the fire a piece of wood, the wood burns and it becomes smoke, right? And it becomes ash. So what is it? What are you feeding the fire for yourself this solstice? What is it in your life that you want to transform? You don't have to physically go out and start a fire. You can think about the fire within yourself and what it is that you want to build on, because that moment on that day, that's the peak moment. And so you may want to really sit with that and acknowledge it. Like, we are fast approaching that moment. What is it that you want to transform inside yourself? I also want to acknowledge that Litha has historically been one of the most powerful times for love magic, and not just romantic love. A love maybe that begins within, or maybe a love with the friendships or the relationships in your life that you're cultivating. Love does not always have to be romantic in nature. The sun is at its maximum power. It's literally beaming its energy down on you with full energy. You want to learn how to receive that energy instead of deflecting it. Now, I know I mentioned early in the episode that I'm not a summer girly, and that's mostly because I just don't love melting in the heat outside. But I do want to absorb the energy of the sun at its peak moment, because that's really going to fuel me to continue this transformation process. So maybe think about it in that way. Like, you want to take on that beautiful solar energy and think about what it is in your life that you are interested in shifting. What threshold are you wanting to cross? What up level are you ready to conquer next? And the other side of it is, it doesn't have to be something huge. So don't put the pressure on yourself that you have to have this massive transformation. Maybe it's just something small. Maybe you want to just overcome your fear of something. Maybe you just want to go on a side quest that feels a little bit awkward, but you want to do it anyway. So just consider that. Now, let's see here. There are many ways that you can celebrate this Sabbath, and I'm going to give you a bunch of different options. I mean, you don't have to do all of these. As with any of these episodes, take what you will, leave what you don't. But here are some ideas. You could watch the sunrise or the sunset or both. If you're witnessing the full length of the longest day, if you're just up for the sunrise and you watch the sunset, I mean, that's a ritual in itself, right? You don't need anything. You don't need anything. You could write what you're releasing on a piece of paper and burn it. You could do that over a candle. You could do that over a small flame in your backyard. If you have a bonfire, you could do it. Maybe you could think about what things served you in the waxing half of the year that you're ready to complete and move on, and the fire won't destroy that, but it will transform it. You could just have the simple act of getting into the sun. Maybe just taking a walk and letting the sun hit you. Don't forget your sunscreen. Maybe you just lay down on a towel in your backyard and just lay and let the sun, drizzle down on you for 10 or 15 minutes. This is also a good way to get your vitamin D. Most of us are very deficient. One other option would be, it's called the love list practice. Once an hour throughout the longest day, pause and complete I love. I think this is really cute. You could just set a timer on your phone, like for every hour you're out throughout the day. I love my kids. I love coffee. I love crystals, just acknowledge the things that you love throughout the day. How often do we do that? It doesn't have to be these huge things. It could just be whatever it is that you love. You could make a flower crown with different types of herbs associated with that solar energy, such as St. John's wort, lavender, calendula, chamomile. All of those herbs are at their peak potency this time of year. You could make a flower crown. You could just pick some herbs, put them in your, in a little vase in your house, whatever it may be. Another option is oak tree magic. If you have access to an oak tree, that would be really cool. You could sit with one and just commune with the tree. Hug the tree. Be a tree hugger. That's all it has to be. That's all it has to be. The other thing that I love is the fairy acknowledgement, the fae acknowledgement. You don't have to do some sort of big ritual. You could leave a flower at a threshold, at a door. You could place a stone somewhere in your house with intention. You could whisper a word of recognition to the fae. In the fairy world, they don't need some sort of big spectacle. They just want awareness, acknowledgement. You could build a Litha art altar. That's something that I'm going to be doing. You could put sunflowers on it, some crystals, citrine, carnelian. In the next segment, I'm going to get into the different crystals for Litha. You could put some yellow and gold candles, maybe some oak leaves, some fresh herbs, maybe images of the sun. All fun ways to make a Litha altar. Now, I want to get into a big segment of this episode, which is the crystals of Litha, because this is the crystal energy, by the way, in case you had forgotten. So I didn't want to go too crazy on this section. I just wanted to offer 5 different crystals. I think I've done single episodes about all of these stones in previous in the crystal library. So I'm just going to do a quick breakdown of 5 different stones, and maybe you already have them. Maybe you could put them on your Litha altar. That would be fun. Or you could carry them in your pocket for your crystal clarity walks. Because I'm doing that. I'm doing those crystal clarity walks all the time. I didn't have time for one today, but it is like 100 degrees outside. So there's that too. So the first one I want to share is sunstone. This is the most literal litha stone, right? Sunstone. It has this optical phenomenon called aventurescence. It creates an inner flash of light. It's the sun kind of made visible in a mineral form. It's from the feldspar family. It carries solar fire energy. It's a very joyful stone. It has confidence and radiance. This is very much an oak king stone. It's got full power, full presence. It really doesn't hold anything back. There is a deeper teaching to this stone. Sunstone doesn't just reflect light, it generates it from within. This is the difference between performing for your power and actually inhabiting it. Think back to my Crystal Basics episode that I just did last week. Entrainment works both ways. Sunstone at Litha is asking your field to sync up with its signal. And you could, I'm fully here, I'm fully alive, I'm fully lit. The question Sunstone asks at Litha, are you shining from the inside out, or are you still waiting for external permission to be fully seen? How to work with sunstone: you could charge it in direct sunlight on the solstice, then hold it to your solar plexus. You could use it with one of the cards in the upcoming spread that I'm going to be talking about, card 1 of the Turning Point spread that I'm going to be sharing towards the end of the episode. And where am I at full power right now? You could wear it or carry it on the longest day itself as a reminder to stay present in the peak rather than rushing past it. A lot of times we're just always trying to get to the next thing. Let's not rush past things. Let's stay in the moment sometimes. Next, we have citrine. It is yellow to golden orange, kind of to a golden orange quartz. It's the color of midsummer sun at its absolute peak. You heard about carnelian and citrine mentioned in the Beltane episode, but citrine at Litha is doing a different type of work. At Beltane, citrine was about solar warmth and arriving. At Litha, it's about what you do with that warmth now that it's at its maximum. So the abundance is here. The harvest is forming. And so what are you going to do with it? The deeper teaching with this stone is that unlike most crystals, citrine doesn't accumulate and hold dense energy. It transmutes it. This is the fire magic of Litha. It's not about destruction. It's more about that transformation. It's the same energy, but with just a different form. In Nicholas Pearson's framework, his framework is very useful here. Citrine's crystalline lattice has a specific vibrational signature that interfaces with your biomagnetic field and moves stagnant energy through rather than storing it. And the question citrine asks at Litha, what are you still carrying that is ready to be transformed rather than just set down? And what needs to go into the fire? How to work with this stone: place it on your solar plexus during a sun meditation. Use it as your, Litha altar anchor stone. Let it hold the energy of intentional transformation through the season. It pairs powerfully with a fire ritual. You could hold it while you write what you're releasing and then set it beside the flame when you're burning your things that you're releasing in the fire. We also have carnelian. It's like that fire orange chalcedony. It's associated with the sacral chakra, vitality, bold action, creative life force. It's one of the oldest stones used in ritual across many cultures. Ancient Egyptians called it the blood of Isis. It's associated with protection and resurrection. Again, this stone appeared in the Beltane episode, but the energy is doing something completely different at Litha. At Beltane, carnelian was about life force and passion igniting. At Litha, it's about the courage to move through that threshold, the bravery of turning itself. Carnelian is not a gentle stone. It does not coddle you. It activates. At the solstice threshold, when everything is asking you to begin yielding something, carnelian provides the energetic courage to do it. consciously rather than having it taken from you. The Oak King doesn't fall reluctantly. He completes with full force. Carnelian is that energy, moving boldly through change rather than gripping what's completing. The question that Carnelian asks is, what are you kind of white knuckling something that wants to turn? Like, what are you forcing to stay that actually wants to change? What would it feel like to release it on purpose with your full power rather than having it just slip away? What needs to be released that you know that you need to release, but you're really struggling to release it? Now is the time. You can carry it with you during any solstice fire ritual that you might be doing. It amplifies and focuses intention when fed to the flames. You can hold it when you feel fear around the change, the turning, the release. Let it remind you that forward motion is safe and good. It pairs well with the third card in the spread that I'm going to share a little bit later. The fourth stone is Golden Tiger's Eye. It's a stone that I've talked about before. It has this golden chatoyant. It's like a golden chatoyant quartz, right? It's that chatoyancy is that band of light that moves when the stone is kind of moved. It's the French word for cat's eye. It is a solar stone. It's associated with the sun, clarity, personal power, and seeing through any kind of illusion. Tiger's eye is specifically a stone of discernment, the ability to see clearly what's real versus what's a fear, what's complete versus what still has life in it. At the peak of the year, when the light is maximum, everything is illuminated. Tiger's eye helps you see without flinching. For me, this is kind of like a stone that I would use when I'm kind of using my medical brain, my science brain with my mystical side, right? It kind of allows me to discern between the two. The chatoyant band moving through the stone, that single line of light in the dark, is the veil really made visible, the maximum light containing the hidden world within. So the question Tiger's Eye asks at Litha, what is the peak illuminating about your life that you have been too busy building to see clearly? Now that you're at the top, what does the view actually show you? This stone is good for use in meditation with card 2 in the upcoming spread, and with the question, what is already beginning to turn? So you want to hold it when you're journaling at the solstice. It sharpens perception and cuts through self-deception. You could place it on your altar beside your oracle deck as an anchor for honest seeing. The final crystal that I want to chat about is pyrite. It's an iron sulfide. It's nicknamed fool's gold, but the joke is on anyone who dismisses it because it is a very powerful stone and it is not fool's gold. The name pyrite comes from the Greek word for fire, pyre, because it sparks when struck against metal or stone. It definitely has a very solar essence. It's golden. It has that cubic crystalline structure. It's associated with abundance, manifestation, and the alchemy of turning effort into gold. Pyrite teaches us that it is truly the stone of alchemy. It holds the energy of transformation through sustained action and willpower. At Litha, you've been building since Yule. And pyrite will ask you, what has genuinely turned to gold in you? Not necessarily the work that you did, but the person you became while doing it. Who have you become since the winter solstice? I mean, that's been 6 months. I know that I personally feel like I've had a lot of change in the last 6 months. Its cubic structure is one of the most geometrically perfect in the mineral kingdom. When you look at Litha, when you look at pyrite, you see those little cubes. Nicholas Pearson does a lot of work on sacred geometry and crystalline structure. And so his work is really great to reference. Pyrite's lattice is a blueprint for organized intentional power. Fool's gold is only fool's gold if you don't know what you're looking at. To someone who understands alchemy, Pyrite is exactly what it appears to be: fire locked inside metal, waiting to be struck into light. The question that pyrite asks: what have you alchemized this year that you haven't fully acknowledged yet? What is the gold you're carrying into the darker half of the year? So you could hold it during the closing meditation, or any gratitude practice that you do on the solstice. It pairs great with card 4 in the turning point spread that I'm going to be sharing. It pairs well with the question, what do I carry into the darker half of the year? You could place it on your Litha altar. So these 5 stones tell the complete story of the Litha threshold. We have sunstone, inhabit the peak. You want to inhabit the peak fully. You want to shine from within. Then you have citrine, which we want to transform what needs to go and not just release it. Then there's carnelian, which helps us move through the threshold with courage, not reluctance. Golden tiger's eye helps you see clearly what the light is showing you. And then pyrite, you carry the gold you've made forward into the waning year. These stones are mirrors. They're showing you the frequencies you already carry: the peak, the fire, the courage, the clarity, the gold. The question is whether you're willing to be in coherence with all of it at once. Now, I want to share with you the Seasons of the Witch Litha Oracle deck that I love to use at this time of the year. It is by Lorraine Anderson and Juliet Diaz, and it is illustrated by one of my favorite artists, Tiana Lukovic. What makes this special is that it's not just a general oracle deck. The deck is exactly with the Litha energy. The themes that are woven throughout this particular deck are abundance, cleansing, creativity, fire energy, growth, inspiration, motherhood, power, success, vitality, warmth. So I was working on this episode and I created something called the Turning Point Spread. It's a 5-card spread, and it's built specifically for the liminal quality of Litha, for that threshold between the peak and then the slow descent. And to work with this spread, you could use this Seasons of the Witch Oracle deck, or you could use any Oracle deck. You could use a tarot deck. The real thing is the questions that I'm going to share. Okay, the 5 questions. The first question is, card 1, where am I at full power right now? Okay, this is your Oak King energy, if we want to kind of play it back. Card 2, what is already beginning to turn? So think about what the light is quietly pulling away from. Card 3, what do I release into the fire? What is going to transform at the solstice threshold this year? Card 4, what do I carry into the darker half of the year? What is going to survive and then just get more deep and more powerful? Card 5, what wants to be born in the shadow? And this is the Holly King energy. What rises when something else yields or pulls back? Now, I don't have all this figured out. I was planning what I want to do, and what I thought would be really fun would be to use my Litha deck and then do a kind of a community card pull for the summer solstice, and then write about it, and then also put the associated crystals with the cards, and then put it into a Substack article. So if you don't know, I just started a Substack. I only have 2 things on there right now because I've been really focusing on my emails. So I also have a newsletter that I've started. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to do a whole spread with this particular spread that I'm going to upload it to Substack. And then, you can read about that, what's coming up for us as a community during this time. So I'm at, I think on Substack, I'm at Big Crystal Energy on Substack. Let me just check that really quick. Yeah, Big Crystal Energy on Substack. I'll link that in the show notes. Also, I do now officially have a newsletter. So I will put a link to my newsletter if you'd like to subscribe in the show notes. The newsletter is really exciting because every week I'm going to be releasing on Sunday nights a newsletter about the upcoming episodes of Big Crystal Energy that week, or whatever else comes up for me that I want to share. Like maybe I want to do a little segment on the summer solstice, or just like I like to include journal prompts, tarot spreads, oracle spreads, things like that too. And then the other final thing that I want to share with you all is that I have created what's called a crystal archetype quiz, which I will link in the show notes. You can take this quiz and then it will tell you your crystal archetype. And then it will also offer you like a description of your archetype, your association with the crystals, what crystals could be suggested for you. And it's a lot of fun. So you could check that out. So I'll put all of that stuff in the show notes. And on that note, I think I've said a lot here today about Litha. It's a really exciting time of the year because for me personally, I love going into the darker half of the year. I love the buildup to the lighter part of the year, but my soul really resides in the darker half of the year. So to me, this is when things get really good. So I can't wait to share more of all the evolution of that with you all. I hope that you consider doing any one of these little rituals that I suggested, or making a little Litha altar. If you end up making a Litha altar, please take a picture of it and share it with me. I'm going to be working on mine too. And then what else was I going to share? Oh, well, by the time this episode comes out, I will have already gone to the San Francisco Crystal Fair. So I will be sharing probably an upcoming episode some of the crystals that I got at the Crystal Fair. And I'm going to be sharing on my social media, of course, my Crystal Fair experience. And I really wish secretly that I could take over the social media for the San Francisco Crystal Fair, because I think that their social media is like not great. It looks like they already have someone that does it. So I'm not really sure how to approach that, but oh my gosh, they need some help. I feel like they could promote their Crystal Fair so much better. And they only have like 4 events a year. So I feel like doing social media for that would not be that challenging, but I'm not really sure what I can do to help with that. But anyway, you all have an amazing Litha and have an amazing summer solstice and enjoy the longest day of the year. What else was I going to say? I don't know. That's it. I think that's all for tonight. Just check out all the links in the show notes for my newsletter, for my Substack, for the crystal archetype quiz. And I would love to hear what your crystal archetype is. I have an upcoming podcast episode that I'm going to be doing all about the crystal archetypes and really break them down. But for now, just find out what you are, and we'll go from there. And have a beautiful day. And I love you all, and have the biggest crystal energy ever. Bye. Thank you so much for spending this time at the threshold with me. If you want to go deeper, follow me on Instagram at mystical.mama.ash, where I share daily crystal magic and behind the scenes of this liminal life. You can also find resources, previous episodes, and ways to work with me at bigcrystalenergy.com. We're also on YouTube at Big Crystal Energy Podcast. And if this episode resonated with you, please rate it and review it and share it with a friend that you think would connect with it. It would mean so much to me in helping build this beautiful community of other magical friends and crystal workers. Thank you so much. Until next time, bye.